Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive.
Yeah.
I'm your guide, and today we're not just cracking open an ancient book, we're delving into centuries of strategic wisdom that has quietly shaped leaders, strategists, and thinkers right across the globe. Imagine uncovering ancient scrolls holding secrets, not just for winning battles, but for navigating the complex terrain of your everyday life. That's the extraordinary journey we're about to embark on.
Exactly. And this deep dive, it's our dedicated mission to truly unpack one of history's most influential and frankly often pretty misunderstood texts. Sun Tzu's The Art of War.
Right.
Our goal isn't to transform you into a military tactician overnight, not at all, but rather to illuminate how this profound work is really a masterclass in human nature, astute decision-making, and crucially, achieving your objectives with the least amount of friction and wasted effort.
Okay.
We're custom tailoring this exploration for you, the learner, so you can extract those core lessons, grasp Sun Tzu's profound and often nuanced meaning, and discover how these ancient principles can be surprisingly applied in your daily life.
So things like navigating a career path, maybe.
Yeah, or managing a challenging project, or even handling a tricky personal dispute. It's about being well-informed with surprising facts and, well, just enough humor to keep you hooked.
Sounds good. And to ensure we capture the true essence of Sun Tzu's thought, we're drawing from a meticulously crafted translation of The Art of War. This isn't just any version, is it?
No, definitely not. It comes complete with a detailed preface, a rich introduction, and extensive commentary that offers really unique insights.
And those commentaries are vital.
Absolutely vital, because they often correct previous, sometimes, as the translator puts it, excessively bad interpretations.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, and they provide crucial historical context and vivid anecdotes that truly bring the ancient text to life. It's this deep dive into the underlying source material that allows us to understand the text, well, deeply, getting to what Sun Tzu truly meant and how you can apply it today.
Right, so let's unpack this wisdom. Our journey begins by truly grasping the foundation of Sun Tzu's strategic thinking. And it sounds like it's all about knowing yourself, understanding your foe, and mastering the context you're operating within.
That's it in a nutshell.
And to do that, we need to go right back to the text itself and the almost legendary figure behind it.
That's right. The translator of our specific source material undertook this massive effort with a very clear, almost you could say, crusading motivation.
Really?
Yeah. They felt Sun Tzu deserved a better fate than he had received from earlier translations. They even call out one specific Jesuit translation as excessively bad and point to a distressing Japanese flavor in other works where, for instance, the Chinese name Holu would incorrectly become Katsuryo.
So it wasn't just academic nitpicking.
Not at all. This was a tireless dedication to accuracy.
Yeah.
It involved cross-referencing, painstaking verification, even including a concordance of Chinese characters to genuinely capture the original nuances. It highlights a real determination to rectify past errors, fill in conceptual gaps, and avoid any willful distortions of passages that might have seemed difficult, inconvenient. This level of intellectual rigor, it lets us dig into the author's true meaning, far beyond just surface interpretations.
And speaking of the author, the enigmatic figure of Sun Tzu, better known as Sun Tzu. He truly comes to life through accounts like Sima Qian's historical biography. There's a legendary story, isn't there? The one that perfectly sets the tone for his uncompromising approach to leadership and discipline.
Oh, the concubine story, yes. When King Holu of Wu commissioned Sun Tzu to train his palace concubines into soldiers...
Which sounds like an impossible task to begin with.
Right. Well, Sun Tzu, with his characteristic directness, laid out his orders with absolute clarity. But as the story goes, these palace women, accustomed to royal indulgence, they just giggled and ignored his commands.
Okay, so what happened then?
Well, what stands out about this radical, almost shocking approach to discipline is Sun Tzu's immediate and unyielding response.
Easy to back down.
Not one bit. Despite the king's alarm and desperate pleas not to execute his favorite concubines, the king even sent a message saying, if we are bereft of these two concubines, our meat and drink will lose their savor.
So my food won't taste good if you kill them.
Basically, yeah. But Sun Tzu remained resolute. He famously retorted, having once received His Majesty's commission to be general of his forces, there are certain commands of His Majesty which, acting in that capacity, I am unable to accept.
Wow. That took courage.
Absolutely. And then, without hesitation, he ordered the beheading of the two company leaders, who happened to be the king's favorites, and installed their replacements.
That's A pretty intense leadership lesson, wouldn't you say?
Intense is one word for it.
It dramatically illustrates something fundamental, though. Unwavering accountability is the bedrock of trust in any leadership role. It's not about being cruel, is it?
No, not gratuitously cruel. It's about an uncompromising demand for accountability when a mission's success or failure hangs in the balance.
Right. If your team, your colleagues, even your family knows you will consistently enforce standards, even when it's uncomfortable or unpopular.
Then they will ultimately respect your authority and follow you anywhere.
Exactly.
Think about a project manager who constantly backtracks on deadlines when challenged, or maybe a parent who issues empty threats. That ambiguity just breeds chaos, doesn't it? It undermines confidence.
Absolutely.
Sun Tzu seems to be saying, clearly establish your battlefield rules, your standards, and stick to them no matter how tough the call. It's about the deep understanding that consistency builds true loyalty.
It's a powerful lesson in earned authority and trust. And building on this foundational idea, the ancient Chinese perspective on war was actually far more nuanced than just simple aggression.
Okay.
As our source material highlights, ancient texts like the Lunyu, Shuqing, I Ching, and Shi Qing, these are foundational works of Chinese philosophy. They all acknowledge the fundamental necessity of military strength.
So it wasn't seen as inherently evil. Not necessarily. They even had a remarkably pragmatic saying, "He who relies solely on warlike measures shall be exterminated. He who relies solely on peaceful measures shall perish."
Wow, that's quite a balance.
It is. This deeply rooted philosophy framed war not as a first choice, but as a severe last resort for the sage ruler, to be used only when absolute necessity demanded it. The normal state, the sage's rule, was to preserve peace, only resorting to armed force when truly driven to it.
Which raises an important question that the source directly addresses and pushes back against, doesn't it? What about those who condemn the use of military weapons entirely?
Right. The text critiques what it calls scholars of our time, blind to all great issues, condemning the use of military weapons.
Strong words.
Very strong. It argues quite starkly that such a stance would surely bring our country to impotence and dishonor. It even draws an analogy between punishment within a family where, the teacher must not spare the rod for a recalcitrant child and military force.
Okay, how does that work?
Well, it suggests lesser infractions need less force, but serious lawlessness requires military weapons and wholesale decapitation, both aiming in the text's philosophical view to get rid of wicked people and to give comfort and relief to the good.
Now, it's important to understand we're exploring the philosophy of an ancient military strategist here, right?
Sure.
We're looking at these concepts within their historical context.
Absolutely. We're not endorsing specific applications today, but it certainly highlights a very pragmatic ancient philosophy that saw force as a necessary tool for preserving order when all else failed.
Precisely. And this ancient philosophy asks you, the listener, to consider, in your personal or professional life, when is a firm, decisive action, your metaphorical rod or military weapon, justified? When is it needed to maintain order, protect your interests, or resolve significant intractable issues? And crucially, how do you ensure it's truly a last resort, deployed with precision, rather than just a knee-jerk first reaction?
It's a challenging question. This delicate balance of peace and readiness, of patience coupled with the capacity for decisive action, it applies to modern life in surprisingly profound ways, from setting boundaries in relationships to strategic business maneuvers.
Okay, so moving into the actual strategic framework, Sun Tzu begins laying the plans, which he considers the bedrock of victory. He introduces 5 fundamental factors for evaluating success or defeat.
That's right.
And the beauty of these, it seems, is that they aren't just for armies. They're truly universal principles applicable to any major undertaking.
Exactly. These are what he calls the 5 constant factors: moral law, heaven, earth, commander, and method and discipline. Let's really dig into each one.
Okay.
Moral law is about the deep moral influence that ensures the populace is in complete accord with their leader, willing to face death or life with him. It's that shared vision, the collective buy-in, the psychological unity that binds everyone together. Think of it as the alignment of purpose.
Got it. Shared purpose.
Then heaven. This encompasses all natural conditions and timing: night and day, cold and heat, times and seasons. Ancient commentators called this the general economy of heaven, including things like the 5 elements, the 4 seasons, wind patterns, cloud formations. Essentially, it's about understanding the macro environment, the uncontrollable external factors, and making sure your timing is right.
So not just weather, but the whole context of time and conditions.
Precisely. Then you have Earth, which details the physical environment. This includes distances great or small danger and security, open ground versus narrow passes, the chances of life and death. It highlights how safety and advantage depend on skillfully using geographical features or, in a broader sense, your physical resources and market landscape. It's about knowing your literal terrain.
Makes sense.
And then there's Commander, which focuses on the indispensable virtues of the leader. Sun Tzu lists wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, and strictness.
Interesting virtues, but different from what you might expect sometimes.
Yeah, it's fascinating how he adapted the traditional 5 cardinal Chinese virtues, substituting courage and strictness for others, emphasizing the practical, gritty qualities absolutely essential for military leadership.
Right. Action-oriented virtues.
Exactly. Finally, method and discipline. This relates to the organizational structure and logistics. Marshaling the army into subdivisions, gradations of rank, maintaining supply routes efficiently, and controlling military expenditure. It's the operational blueprint, the how.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, these 5 factors offer a truly comprehensive framework for assessing any major project, right? Or a business strategy, even a personal goal.
Absolutely. Think about it. Imagine you're launching a new startup. Do you have full buy-in and a shared vision among your team? That's moral law.
Okay.
Is your market timing right and are external economic conditions favorable? That's heaven.
Right.
Do you have the necessary resources, a favorable location, and a clear understanding of your competitive landscape? Earth. Is your leadership strong, decisive, and trustworthy? Commander. And is your operational process efficient, well-structured, capable of sustained effort? That's method and discipline.
It's not just a checklist. It sounds like a powerful diagnostic tool for understanding your chances of success before you even start.
That's exactly what it is. And following these foundational factors, Sun Tzu then outlines what he calls 7 considerations for forecasting victory or defeat, essentially, a precise comparative analysis framework.
So you use these to weigh your side against your opponent.
Exactly, you compare. Which ruler possesses the moral law? Which general has the superior ability? Which side has the advantages of heaven and earth? Whose discipline is stronger? Whose officers and men are more highly trained? And, crucially, which army has greater constancy in reward and punishment?
And that constancy in reward and punishment, that sounds important.
It's particularly illuminating. As ancient commentators like Tzu explain, it signifies absolute certainty that merit will be properly rewarded and misdeeds summarily punished.
No ambiguity.
No ambiguity, no favoritism, no exceptions. Everyone understands the rules and the consequences. This predictability, paradoxically, builds immense trust and discipline within the ranks.
Interesting how certainty leads to trust there.
Yeah. Think about how you could apply these 7 considerations today. Maybe analyze a competitive landscape in your industry, evaluate a new business opportunity against potential rivals,
Or even assess your own readiness for a significant personal challenge, like a career change or a big negotiation.
Precisely. It's a powerful framework for strategic self-assessment and competitive intelligence. It forces you to look at your strengths and weaknesses relative to others in a structured, objective way. It helps you see where you genuinely hold an advantage or perhaps where you need to build one up.
Okay, this is really practical stuff. Now let's dive into Chapter 2, Waging War, which you said cuts straight to the chase with the absolute imperative of speed and efficiency.
Yes, and Sun Tzu immediately quantifies the immense cost of conflict, providing astonishing detail. He meticulously calculates the burden for raising a massive army of 100,000 men.
And the numbers are huge, right?
They really are. He lists 1,000 chariots, 1,000 supply wagons, 100,000 coats of mail, and the staggering daily expenses amounting to 1,000 ounces of silver.
Wow. 1,000 ounces of silver per day.
Per day. What's truly striking here is how Sun Tzu, writing centuries ago, immediately quantifies this resource drain. This isn't just about military might. It highlights that fundamentally every conflict or protracted effort, whether it's a war or a business venture, it has a significant and relentlessly accumulating burn rate.
Yeah, that term really resonates today.
It does. He makes it explicitly clear that war is a last resort precisely because of its crushing economic impact and the immense burden it places on the state and its people. It's a stark reminder that time is a resource and it's always ticking away.
And from that precise cost calculation, he drives home the peril of prolonged warfare. He states, with absolute certainty.
Whoa, was it? When you engage in actual fighting, if victory is long in coming, the men's weapons will grow dull and their ardor will be damped. And then the definitive statement that truly resonates. There is no instance of a country having benefited from prolonged warfare.
None.
Ever.
According to Sun Tzu, none. It's about avoiding that slow, debilitating drain of resources, morale, and national strength.
Which leads to that seemingly paradoxical statement about haste versus delay.
Right. Though we have heard of stupid haste in war, cleverness has never been seen associated with long delays.
So haste can be bad, but delay is always bad.
Essentially, yes. Ancient commentators clarify that while haste can be injudicious if it's reckless or ill-conceived, tardiness is almost always foolish because it inevitably leads to impoverishment and calamity.
Even if you're being clever about delaying. Well, the source mentions Fabius Cunctator, the Roman general known for his dilatory tactics against Hannibal. These tactics bought time, certainly, but the source notes it's a moot question whether his tactics would have proved successful in the long run had Hannibal not been recalled to Africa. So even clever delay is seen as inherently risky and potentially ruinous. It's a caution against indecision above all.
So for you, the listener, how does this principle of swift execution and avoiding prolonged conflict apply? In your own projects, maybe negotiations, or even personal disputes?
Well, it suggests a strong bias towards decisive action and efficient resolution. Avoid those drawn-out struggles that drain your resources, your time, and your morale.
Like that burn rate idea in a startup or for a personal goal.
Exactly. You want to achieve your objective before you run out of capital, energy, or enthusiasm. Don't let indecision or endless deliberation become a more costly enemy than any external challenge you face.
That makes a lot of sense. There's another efficiency lesson in this chapter, too, about foraging.
Yes, the strategic advantage of foraging on the enemy, Sun Tzu succinctly puts it. Hence, a wise general makes a point of foraging on the enemy. 1 cartload of the enemy's provisions is equivalent to 20 of one's own.
Okay, now, obviously, this isn't about literal looting in our daily lives.
No, definitely not. What it profoundly means is leveraging a competitor's resources, weaknesses, or existing infrastructure, rather than relying solely on your own, often expensive efforts.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Imagine analyzing your competitor's supply chain to find a more efficient way to source your own materials. Or maybe adapting an open-source software tool rather than building something similar entirely from scratch. It's about extreme resourcefulness and strategic efficiency.
Finding shortcuts to success that conserve your own precious resources.
That's the core idea. As the commentator Hoshi sums up this chapter's main lesson perfectly, war is not a thing to be trifled with, and by extension, neither is any significant endeavor you undertake. Efficiency is key.
Which brings us nicely to Chapter 3, titled Attack by Stratagem. You mentioned this is where some consider the pinnacle of generalship, focusing on achieving victory without fighting.
Exactly. Sun Tzu makes a powerful, almost revolutionary declaration here. Hence, to fight and conquer in all your battles is not supreme excellence. Supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting.
That's a profound statement. Not just winning, but winning without the fight itself.
It's where it truly gets interesting for practical application beyond the battlefield. It's not about brute force or overwhelming numbers. It's about pure strategic brilliance.
Like the Moltke example.
Precisely. The source cites Moltke's triumph at Sedan in 1870, achieved practically without bloodshed through superior maneuvering, impeccable intelligence, and overwhelming preparation. That's a perfect historical illustration.
So for you, the listener, how can you achieve your goals, maybe win arguments or succeed in competition by outmaneuvering or outpreparing rather than engaging in direct, costly confrontation?
Well, think about a preemptive strategy that creates an overwhelming advantage before conflict even arises. Or using subtle influence and negotiation to achieve your objective before a head-on clash is even necessary. It's about making the confrontation irrelevant because you've already won.
Yeah, of course, foresight. Sun Tzu talks about balking the enemy's plans.
Yes, the highest form of generalship, he asserts, is to balk the enemy's plans, ideally at their very inception. This isn't passive defense, it's an active, preemptive counterpolicy. As one commentator clarifies, it means actively preventing the enemy's designs from even taking shape.
And critically, he says, avoid sieges.
Yes, absolutely. The rule is not to besiege walled cities if it can possibly be avoided. He details the staggering reasons. Immense cost preparations alone taking 3 months, building earthen mounds against the walls another 3.
Months and months of effort.
And the disastrous human toll, 1/3 of your men slain all for uncertain results. The source points to the Boersma State in 1899, who, by dissipating their strength before Kimberley, Mafficking, or even Ladysmith laying siege likely cost them their broader strategic advantage in the Anglo-Boer War.
So don't bang your head against a wall, basically.
Pretty much. Sun Tzu even warns against the impatient general who, unable to control his irritation, might launch a premature, swarming ants assault.
That's a vivid image.
It is. This impulsive direct action born of frustration leads only to disastrous losses without achieving the objective of taking the town. In your daily life, this translates to avoiding high-friction, resource-draining, head-on collisions.
Thanks, Dad.
Aim to disrupt or neutralize opponents' strategies before they fully develop. Resist the urge to act rashly out of impatience or frustration, especially when facing a seemingly impregnable obstacle. Don't waste your precious resources on an ant-like assault when a smarter, less costly path might exist.
Okay. And for leadership and strategic thinking, Sun Tzu then outlines 5 essentials for victory.
Yes, emphasizing what it truly takes to succeed. He will win who? 1. Knows when to fight and when not to fight, discerning the right moment for action or restraint.
Timing is crucial.
2. Knows how to handle both superior and inferior forces, adapting tactics to relative strength.
Flexibility.
3. Whose army is animated by the same spirit throughout all its ranks, fostering true unity and morale.
Team spirit.
Who prepared himself, waits to take the enemy unprepared, leveraging the element of surprise.
Preparation and patience.
And most significantly, 5, who has military capacity and is not interfered with by the sovereign, emphasizing autonomy and trust in the commander on the ground.
That last point, the general's autonomy, seems absolutely crucial.
It really is. The source quotes ancient wisdom. It is the sovereign's function to give broad instructions, but to decide on battle is the function of the general.
Let the person on the ground make the call.
Exactly. Napoleon's extraordinary success, for instance, is often attributed to his complete operational freedom, as he was effectively general and sovereign in one. This contrasts sharply with numerous military disasters caused by undue interference from a distant government or ruler.
So for us, this means recognizing the importance of strategic patience, delegating effectively to capable individuals, fostering unified team morale, leveraging surprise, and ensuring you have the necessary autonomy for decisive action within your area of responsibility.
Well put. And this profound advice culminates in Sun Tzu's most famous maxim, a principle that echoes through centuries because of its undeniable truth. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles.
And the flip side.
If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle.
Wow, that's stark. Any examples of that failure?
Yes, the disastrous defeat of Fu Qin at the Fei River in 383 BC, where his numerically superior forces were disastrously routed, is cited as a direct historical consequence of knowing neither himself nor his enemy. He was overconfident in his numbers and entirely ignorant of his opponent's strategy and morale.
So this is a fundamental, timeless principle for success in any domain.
Absolutely. Whether you're planning a business venture, embarking on personal development, or navigating competitive situations, success hinges on accurate self-assessment, truly understanding your own strengths, weaknesses, and resources, and a thorough, empathetic understanding of the external environment, your competitors, the market, the challenges, and even the motivations of others. It truly underpins everything Sun Tzu teaches about strategy.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork for strategy, understanding yourself, your context, and your enemy. Now let's shift gears and explore how Sun Tzu advises putting these principles into dynamic action, starting with how a true master prepares for inevitable victory.
Exactly. We move into the realm of dynamic engagement. Chapter 4, Tactical Dispositions, begins with Sun Tzu's core philosophy on securing invincibility. He declares, "The good fighters of old first put themselves beyond the possibility of defeat."
Okay, defense first.
Sort of. First put themselves beyond defeat, and then waited for an opportunity of defeating the enemy.
Ah, okay. Secure yourself, then wait for the opening.
Precisely. And what's truly profound here is the subtle but vital distinction Sun Tzu makes. To secure ourselves against defeat lies in our own hands.
That's controllable.
Right. But the opportunity of defeating the enemy is provided by the enemy himself. Think about that. You can make yourself immune to defeat through meticulous preparation. By shoring up your weaknesses and eliminating vulnerabilities, that's on you.
But the actual win?
But the moment of victory, the decisive breakthrough, often depends on your opponent's missteps, their overconfidence, or a vulnerability they expose. You create the conditions for victory, but the enemy often provides the trigger.
So a truly skilled general wins his battles by making no mistakes.
Exactly. As ancient commentators like Chen Hao clarify, this means planning no superfluous marches, no wasted effort, and devising no futile attacks, no actions without a clear, probable path to success. It's about deliberate, error-free execution from a position of inherent strength, not desperation or reactive scrambling.
And this leads to that paradox about winning before the battle.
Yes. The victorious strategist only seeks battle after the victory has been won, whereas he who is destined to defeat first fights and afterwards looks for victory.
That sounds backwards, but I think I get it. Plan the win first.
Exactly. Another commentator, Hoshi, illuminates this beautifully. In warfare, first lay plans which will ensure victory, and then lead your army to battle. If you will not begin with stratagem but rely on brute strength alone, victory will no longer be assured. The victory is conceived and secured in the planning stage, not merely fought for on the field.
So what does it truly mean for you, the listener, to win the battle before it's fought in your own life?
Well, it's about building robust foundations, anticipating potential problems, reducing your own vulnerabilities, and positioning yourself so effectively that success becomes highly probable, almost a formality, even before direct competition or challenge begins.
It's the difference between trying to win a losing battle versus preparing so thoroughly that the win is virtually inevitable.
That's it. Imagine creating an unassailable position, whether it's in a tricky negotiation, delivering a complex project, or tackling a significant personal challenge. It's about designing your circumstances for success from the outset.
Okay, building on that preparation, Chapter 5, Energy, delves into how forces are controlled, shaped, and unleashed with maximum impact.
Yes. And Sun Tzu makes an incredibly insightful statement about scale first. Controlling a large force is nowise different from fighting with a small one. It is merely a question of instituting signs and signals.
So it's about the system, not the size.
Exactly. It highlights that clear communication, standardized procedures, and effective command structures are absolutely key to managing any effort, regardless of its size or complexity. It's about the underlying systems, not just brute numbers.
Now here's where it truly becomes fascinating for those of us navigating modern challenges. The interplay of Cheng and Qi methods, direct and indirect.
Ah, yes, Cheng and Qi. These two terms are absolutely fundamental to Sun Tzu's dynamic strategy. Cheng is the direct, straightforward, expected attack facing the enemy head-on. Think of it as your primary logical argument or your main sales pitch.
The obvious move.
The obvious move. Qi, on the other hand, is the indirect, deceptive, unexpected maneuver or diversion. This might be a subtle persuasion tactic, a lateral product launch, or an unexpected pivot in a negotiation.
The surprise move.
The surprise.
Yeah.
And here's the crucial part. They are not separate and static. Sun Tzu emphasizes that Cheng may also be Qi and Qi may also be Chen. They are mutually interchangeable, dynamic, and ever-shifting, like the two sides of a circle.
So the direct can become indirect and vice versa.
Exactly. Consider the famous exploit of Han Xin, a brilliant general. He marched ostensibly against Ling Xin, that's the Cheng, the direct expected move, but then suddenly he threw a large force across the Yellow River in wooden tubs, utterly surprising the enemy, that's the Qi.
Wow, okay.
Or, as Li Weikong, another astute general, put it simply, in war, to march straight ahead is Qing. Turning movements, on the other hand, are Qi. The point is, the direct move can become indirect, and the indirect can become direct, depending on context and perception.
So in any competitive situation, business strategy, sports, a debate success often comes from effectively blending these.
Yes, blending direct efforts with unexpected maneuvers. When should you use a direct, clear approach, like a logical argument or a frontal marketing campaign? And when is it time for an indirect, surprising one? Perhaps a subtle persuasion tactic, a lateral product launch, or an unexpected pivot in your personal strategy.
It encourages truly creative thinking and understanding that apparent simplicity might actually mask a sophisticated, clever deception, keeping opponents guessing.
That's a big part of it. Sun Tzu also talks about the sheer impact of your army being like a grindstone dashed against an egg.
Ouch.
Yeah, and this devastating effect is affected by the science of weak points and strong. It's about finding that vulnerability. He says the quality of decision is like the well-timed swoop of a falcon, which enables it to strike and destroy its victim.
Like the Nelson example.
Exactly. Admiral Nelson at the Battle of Trafalgar, he coolly waited until he was within close range, holding fire, before unleashing a devastating broadside that crippled the combined French and Spanish fleets. That illustrates the power of precise timing and concentrated force perfectly.
He uses another powerful analogy, too, about a crossbow.
Yes. Energy may be likened to the bending of a crossbow, decision to the releasing of the trigger. This emphasizes stored potential force, gathered and held, then unleashed at the precise opportune moment.
So for you, the listener, where in your life can you be like the bent crossbow? Where can you store your energy, gather your resources, and then strike with precision?
Right. Identifying the crucial vulnerabilities and acting decisively at the optimal moment. It's about channeling your power for maximum effect, not just expending it randomly.
And then there's the counterintuitive wisdom of feigning disorder and timidity. That sounds risky.
It can be, but it's strategic. Sun Tzu states, amid the turmoil and tumult of battle, there may be seeming disorder and yet no real disorder at all. Amid confusion and chaos, your array may be without head or tail, yet it will be proof against defeat.
It's a fantastic paradox, isn't it? How does that work?
He explains this tactical deception. Hiding order beneath the cloak of disorder is simply a question of subdivision, so internally organized chaos.
Okay.
Concealing courage under a show of timidity presupposes a fund of latent energy. Parading weakness under cover of strength is affected by tactical disposition.
Because there's a catch, right?
Yes, a crucial prerequisite, as the commentator Tumu clarifies. If you wish to feign confusion in order to lure the enemy on, you must first have perfect discipline. If you don't, your feigned disorder just becomes real chaos.
So you need to be highly organized to look disorganized effectively.
Precisely. The source recounts how Emperor Wen's Phimises were famously tricked by an apparent ruse of old age and infirmity into an ambush at Potang, demonstrating how a display of weakness can be a strategic trap.
What's deeply fascinating here is how these concepts apply to strategic communication or negotiation in any domain today.
Absolutely. Sometimes appearing less prepared, more vulnerable, or even deliberately disorganized can lead opponents to underestimate you, reveal their true intentions, or become overconfident and sloppy.
It teaches you to look beyond surface appearances and recognize that what seems like weakness can, in fact, be a calculated strategic strength. It's about mastering perception, not just reality.
That's a great way to put it.
Chapter 6, Weak Points and Strong, continues this theme of dynamic engagement, often using that profound metaphor of water.
Yes, and it starts with a defining mark of a great soldier, as quoted by Colonel Henderson when analyzing Stonewall Jackson's genius. He fights on his own terms, or fights not at all. This emphasizes control over the engagement.
Setting the terms of the fight.
Exactly. The skillful leader, according to Sun Tzu, masters a dual strategy. They can either cause the enemy to approach of his own accord by holding out enticing advantages,
Luring them in.
or make it impossible for the enemy to draw near by inflicting damage on critical points they must defend.
Deterring them.
Right. And critically, he advises, appear at points which the enemy must hasten to defend. March swiftly to places where you are not expected. Furthermore, an army may march, it really is. For you, the listener, how can you identify the empty spaces in your field or areas of least resistance where you can operate effectively without direct opposition or where your competitors are most vulnerable?
It's about seeking leverage and avoiding unnecessary resource-draining confrontations. It's not about fighting where the enemy is strongest, but where they are weakest, or preferably where they aren't at all.
Precisely. Sun Tzu also states that the highest pitch of tactical disposition is to conceal them.
Keep your plans secret.
Completely secret. This means showing no sign of your plans or intentions, making it impossible for even the subtlest spies or wisest brains to pry into your designs.
And in the advantage of that,
by discovering the enemy's dispositions and remaining invisible ourselves, we can keep our forces concentrated while the enemy's must be divided. This leads to a powerful advantage, having many to the enemy's few.
because they have to spread out to defend everywhere.
Exactly. The spot where we intend to fight must not be made known, for then the enemy will have to prepare against a possible attack at several different points, and his forces being thus distributed. The numbers we shall have to face at any given point will be proportionately few.
Like the General Grant example.
Yes, General Sheridan once famously attributed General Grant's victories in the American Civil War to precisely this principle. While his opponents were kept fully employed, wondering what he was going to do, he was thinking most of what he was going to do himself.
Focus on your own plan. Keep them guessing. The importance of secrecy and discretion in executing your plans seems profound.
It is. When you reveal your intentions prematurely, you allow others to prepare, dissipate their energy, and ultimately reduce your concentrated force. This applies whether you're surprising a market with an innovation or keeping a personal goal private until it's achieved.
And finally, we come back to that profound analogy. Military tactics are like unto water.
Yes. For water in its natural course runs away from high places and hastens downwards. So in war, the fundamental way is to avoid what is strong and to strike at what is weak. Like water, taking the line of least resistance.
What's truly captivating here is the profound metaphor of water as the ultimate adaptable force.
It really is. Sun Tzu states, with elegant simplicity, therefore, just as water retains no constant shape, so in warfare there are no constant conditions.
You have to adapt.
Constantly. The skilled soldier, the heaven-born captain, is one who works out his victory in relation to the foe whom he is facing and can modify his tactics in relation to his opponent and thereby succeed in winning.
So how can you apply this water principle to your strategy?
Well, it means constantly adapting to the unique circumstances of a situation, finding the path of least resistance to achieve your goals, and flowing around obstacles rather than crashing into them head-on. This highlights the immense value of flexibility, improvisation, and situational awareness over rigid adherence to a preset plan. Be like water.
That's a powerful takeaway. As we transition into the next phase of our deep dive, the art of adaptation, we tackle the intricate complexity of maneuvering.
Right. Chapter 7 begins by noting that while a general receives commands from the sovereign, he must first blend and harmonize the different elements of his army before undertaking any operation.
Internal alignment first.
Always. As the ancient strategist Sun Tzu keenly observed, without harmony in the state, no military expedition can be undertaken. Without harmony in the army, no battle array can be formed. This emphasizes that internal alignment is always the first battlefield.
This internal harmony then sets the stage for the strategic concept of the artifice of deviation. What's that about?
It's about strategic misdirection, Sun Tzu proposes. To take a long and circuitous route after enticing the enemy out of the way and those starting after him, to contrive to reach the goal before him, shows knowledge of the artifice of deviation.
The long way round can be faster.
If it misleads the enemy, yes. The famed march of Chaoshi in 270 BC to Oyi is a perfect illustration. He feigned delay, entrenching his troops for 28 days, making the enemy believe he was bogged down. Then he executed a lightning-fast forced march, arriving and occupying a commanding position before the Qin army even knew what hit them.
Wow, like Hannibal and Napoleon in the Alps, too.
Exactly. Taking an unconventional, arduous path to achieve a strategic surprise.
So for you, in your daily life, how can you create a diversion or take a seemingly longer, less obvious route that ultimately puts you ahead by misleading your competition or avoiding significant obstacles?
It's about outsmarting, not simply outbrute your opponent. However, this isn't without risk. Sun Tzu is very clear about the perils of aggressive speed in maneuvering.
Speed isn't always good.
Not if it breaks your force. A 100-li forced march risks losing leaders of all your 3 divisions, a catastrophic loss of command, while even a 50-li march means only half your force will reach the goal. This highlights the crucial trade-off between speed and maintaining cohesion, especially when your team or resources are stretched.
And crucially, Sun Tzu hammers home the non-negotiable importance of the supply chain again.
Oh, yes. He states with absolute finality. An army without its baggage train is lost. Without provisions, it is lost. Without bases of supply, it is lost.
No supplies, no success.
Period. No matter the endeavor, a new business, a major personal goal, or even organizing a large family event, neglecting your supply lines, whether that's financial capital, emotional energy, team support, or simply raw materials, will inevitably lead to failure. It's a deep dive into the absolute practicalities of sustained effort and foresight. Your resources are your lifeblood.
Beyond physical supplies, intelligence gathering and local knowledge are paramount for successful maneuvering.
Absolutely. Sun Tzu states, "We cannot enter into alliances until we are acquainted with the designs of our neighbors." And equally important, we are not fit to lead an army on the march unless we are familiar with the face of the country. Its mountains and forests, its pitfalls and precipices, its marshes and swamps.
Know the terrain, know the players.
And use local help. We shall be unable to turn natural advantages to account unless we make use of local guides.
This emphasizes the absolute importance of thorough intelligence gathering, meticulous reconnaissance, and leveraging specialized local expertise before embarking on any significant undertaking.
You wouldn't launch a global product without deeply understanding diverse market nuances, just as an ancient general needed detailed terrain knowledge.
Sun Tzu also advises,
Yeah.
In war, practice dissimulation and you will succeed. Deception again.
Yes. And in action, he urges a unique combination. Let your rapidity be that of the wind, your compactness that of the forest.
Vast like the wind, solid like the forest. How can you embody both swiftness and internal solidity?
Well, it suggests a strategic blend of rapid, unpredictable execution with a deeply organized, unified internal structure. This allows for quick adaptation and decisive strikes against the unwary.
Sun Tzu offers profound insight into managing the army's spirit too, acknowledging its fragility.
Yes. A whole army may be robbed of its spirit. A commander-in-chief may be robbed of his presence of mind. He then details the crucial art of studying moods within your own forces, recognizing the ebb and flow of human energy.
The morning, noon, evening cycle.
Right. Now, a soldier's spirit is keenest in the morning. By noonday, it has begun to flag, and in the evening, his mind has been only on returning to camp.
So strike when the enemy is tired.
A clever general, therefore, avoids an army when its spirit is keen, but attacks it when it is sluggish and inclined to return. The historical Battle of Trebia, where the Romans famously fought fasting against Hannibal's well-fed and refreshed troops, is a classic illustration of ignoring this principle of timing.
This is a fantastic lesson in emotional intelligence and strategic timing, not just for armies, but for any collective effort. How do you manage your own energy and the moods of your team, family, or even gauge the prevailing sentiment in a market?
It's about discerning the optimal moment to push forward and when to withdraw or wait, recognizing the natural ebbs and flows of human motivation and external conditions. It allows you to maximize your impact by striking when you or your team are at your strongest and your opponent is at their weakest.
Sun Tzu also provides crucial rules of engagement, almost a code of conduct for conflict that minimizes unnecessary risk.
Yes, a series of prohibitions. Do not pursue an enemy who simulates flight. Do not attack soldiers whose temper is keen. Do not swallow a bait offered by the enemy. Do not interfere with an army that is returning home.
Don't fall for traps. Don't pick fights you can't win.
Exactly, and most powerfully, with chilling strategic wisdom. When you surround an army, leave an outlet free. Do not press a desperate foe too hard.
Leave them an escape route. Why?
The meaning of desperate foe here is not about mercy. It's pure, calculated strategy. Leaving an outlet free is a move to make him believe that there is a road to safety, and thus prevent his fighting with the courage of despair.
So they don't fight like cornered animals.
Precisely. As the commentator Tu Mu adds succinctly, after that, you may crush him. The historical anecdote of Cao Cao's ingenious tunnel retreat from Zhang, which led to a devastating ambush of his overconfident pursuers who assumed he was broken, illustrates this perfectly.
So for us, these are highly applicable principles for negotiation, conflict resolution, and competitive strategy. Don't fall for obvious traps or provocations. Avoid cornering an opponent who has nothing left to lose.
Because they will fight with extreme ferocity and unpredictability.
And understand that an opponent in retreat can be at their most dangerous if their escape is completely cut off, turning a tactical retreat into a desperate last stand.
Very true.
Chapter 8, Variation of Tactics, emphasizes the general's versatility and adaptability above all else. The title, 9 Variations. This doesn't mean just 9 tricks.
No, exactly. It signifies an indefinitely large number of tactical variations, not a fixed list. It highlights endless adaptability rather than rigid rules. Sun Tzu offers varied, specific tactical advice for different situations.
Like what?
Things like, in difficult country, do not encamp. In country where high roads intersect, join hands with your allies. Do not linger in dangerously isolated positions. In hemmed-in situations, you must resort to stratagem. And with directness, in a desperate position, you must fight.
He also provides a series of powerful prohibitions that challenge conventional thinking, emphasizing the general's higher strategic duty.
Yes. There are roads which must not be followed, armies which must not be attacked, cities which must not be besieged, positions which must not be contested, commands of the sovereign which must not be obeyed.
Don't obey the sovereign. That's bold.
It is. This raises an important question for you. When should a general, or you in your sphere of influence, defy conventional wisdom or even direct orders for the greater strategic good? The source explicitly states that imperial wishes must be subordinated to military necessity.
So the person on the ground knows best. Again, it implies that true mastery means discerning when to break the rules or when the rules themselves become counterproductive to the ultimate objective rather than blindly following them. It's about strategic discernment.
Precisely. And in the wise leader's plans, Sun Tzu states, considerations of advantage and of disadvantage will be blended together.
Weighing pros and cons together.
Yes, rigorously assessing both potential gains and inherent risks simultaneously, rather than looking at them in isolation. It's a holistic view of decision-making. The art of war teaches us to rely not on the likelihood of the enemy's not coming, but on our own readiness to receive him.
Be prepared.
Not on the chance of his not attacking, but rather on the fact that we have made our position unassailable.
This principle powerfully promotes proactive preparation over reactive hope or wishful thinking.
Definitely. It encourages investing deeply in your own capabilities, strengthening your defenses, and meticulously crafting your strategic positioning, rather than passively relying on an opponent's potential inaction or inherent weakness. It's about creating an impregnable fortress within yourself and your organization.
Sun Tzu then lists 5 very dangerous faults that may cripple a general. What are those?
1. Recklessness, which leads to destruction. 2. Cowardice, which leads to capture. 3. A hasty temper, which can be easily provoked by insults.
Easily manipulated.
Right. 4. Delicacy of honor, being overly sensitive to shame. And 5. Over-solicitude for his men, which leads to worry and trouble.
Over-solicitude. Being too caring is a fault.
Strategically, yes. These are not moral judgments on a general's character, but incredibly astute observations of strategic liabilities. For example, over-solicitude for soldiers might make a general hesitant to demand necessary difficult sacrifices, ultimately jeopardizing the entire mission.
So this serves as a powerful self-assessment tool for you, the listener. Which of these 5 faults might you inadvertently exhibit in your own leadership, decision-making, or interpersonal dynamics?
Exactly. Recognizing these potential pitfalls within yourself is the essential first step toward mitigating them and becoming a more effective, balanced leader. It's a profound call for self-awareness.
Moving forward, Chapter 9, The Army on the March, provides remarkably practical and detailed advice on encampment and, crucially, observing the subtle signs of the enemy and the environment.
Yes, Sun Tzu's observations are incredibly granular here. He notes things like, movement among the trees of a forest shows that the enemy is advancing, likely felling trees for roads.
Okay.
The appearance of a number of screens in the midst of thick grass means that the enemy wants to make us suspicious. Probably a ruse during a retreat. The rising of birds in their flight is the sign of an ambuscade. Startled beasts indicate that a sudden attack is coming.
He even specifies how to interpret dust plumes. That's like ancient satellite imagery.
Sort of. When there is dust rising in a high column, it is the sign of chariots advancing. When the dust is low but spread over a wide area, it betokens the approach of infantry. If the dust branches out in different directions, it shows that parties have been sent to collect firewood, indicating a larger, perhaps less immediately hostile presence.
General Baden-Powell used similar ideas for scouting. It's a masterclass in keen observation and reading the subtle cues in any environment.
It really is. How can you become a better observer? Picking up on non-obvious signs in negotiations, discerning team dynamics, anticipating market trends, or even recognizing subtle cues in everyday interpersonal communication. It's about moving beyond superficial information and seeing the deeper patterns.
Sun Tzu also teaches how to read the state of your own troops and infer their morale and intent from their subtle behaviors.
Yes, he observes things like, the sight of men whispering together in small knots or speaking in subdued tones points to disaffection amongst the rank and file.
Whispering means trouble.
Often. Too frequent rewards signify that the enemy is at the end of his resources, a sign of desperation by the command. Too many punishments betray a condition of dire distress, indicating loss of control.
Even physical signs.
Yeah. If men sent to draw water drink themselves first, the army is suffering from thirst. If soldiers stand leaning on their spears, they are faint from hunger. These are incredibly human observations.
He even describes how to know if soldiers are determined to fight to the death.
Yes. When they feed horses grain and kill cattle for food, abandoning normal provisions, and don't hang their cooking pots over campfires, showing they won't return to their tents.
Wow. These observations offer powerful insights into human psychology under extreme pressure. For you, how can you gauge the morale and underlying motivations of your team, or even yourself, by recognizing these kinds of subtle behavioral indicators?
It's about developing deep empathy and psychological astuteness to understand the unsaid cues that reveal true intentions and states of being.
What's truly fascinating here, a core concept, is the intriguing analogy of the Shuaijian snake.
Yes, the shuaijian, a mythical snake found in the Chang Mountains that if you strike at its head and you will be attacked by its tail, strike at its tail and you will be attacked by its head, strike at its middle and you will be attacked by head and tail both.
So it reacts as one unified body. Can an army do that?
Sun Tzu poses the question, can an army be made to imitate the shuaijian? His answer is a resounding yes. He cites the example of the Wu and Yao sworn enemies who, if caught by a storm while crossing a river in the same boat, will come to each other's assistance just as the left hand helps the right.
Calming danger creates unity.
Exactly. And this is a profound lesson in true team cohesion and dynamic responsiveness, far beyond mere command and control. It's not enough to prevent flight through mechanical means like tethering of horses and the burying of chariot wheels.
Like anchoring your forces.
Right. Soldiers need internal will, courage, and a shared sense of existential purpose. How can your team or organization become so interconnected and adaptable that an attack on one part triggers a unified, instinctive, and fluid response from the whole, acting as a single living organism?
It emphasizes organic unity and shared purpose over rigid, top-down control, fostering a spirit where everyone moves as one.
Precisely.
And finally, a key characteristic of the general, his composure and secrecy.
Yes. Sun Tzu writes, "It is the business of a general to be quiet and thus ensure secrecy, upright and just, and thus maintain order. Critically, he must be able to mystify his officers and men by false reports and appearances, and thus keep them in total ignorance of the larger strategic picture."
Keep your own troops in the dark.
Sometimes, yes. As the commentator Cao Kong states, the troops must not be allowed to share your schemes in the beginning. They may only rejoice with you over their happy outcome. The historical account of Pan Chao's successful campaign against Yarkand involved secretly releasing prisoners to spread false plans, leading the enemy to divide their forces before his devastating surprise attack.
So what does it mean for you to maintain a calm, inscrutable demeanor in the face of challenges, especially when leading others?
Well, it asks, when is it strategically beneficial to withhold information or even create a calculated misdirection for your own team? Perhaps to focus them on precise execution rather than worrying about the broader, potentially gloomy strategic picture.
This highlights the sometimes uncomfortable truth that leaders must carry burdens of knowledge alone, making decisions that are not always immediately understood by those they lead, but are ultimately for the collective good.
It's a tough part of leadership, certainly.
Chapter X, Terrain, shifts our focus to understanding the physical landscape as a critical ally or adversary. Sun Tzu introduces 6 core categories.
Yes. 6 core categories of terrain, each with unique strategic implications. 1. Accessible ground. 2. Entangling ground. 3. Temporizing ground. 4. Narrow passes. 5. Precipitous heights. And 6. Distant ground.
And for each, he provides specific, precise, tactical advice.
Exactly. For accessible ground, for instance, you should be first to occupy high and sunny spots and guard your supply line. For entangling ground, abandon it quickly if the enemy is unprepared. For narrow passes, occupy them first, garrison them strongly, and await the enemy.
The story of Pi Xingqian illustrates this.
Yes, the Chinese general in the 7th century. He once moved his camp to a nearby hill against the protests of his officers who preferred a fortified position. He saved his army from a disastrous flash flood that very night. This demonstrated the foresight and advantage of choosing high and sunny places, not just for combat.
So terrain is your ally.
Sun Tzu emphasizes, the natural formation of the country is the soldier's best ally. However, a general should utilize, but never rely wholly on natural advantages, instead blending it with the power of estimating the adversary. Your environment is a tool, not a crutch.
This is a crucial lesson in environmental awareness and strategic positioning for your life. What are the terrains in your personal or professional sphere? Market conditions, social dynamics, resource availability, even internal team politics.
Right. How can you identify and seize advantageous positions or recognize and effectively avoid or escape disadvantageous ones? It emphasizes leveraging your environment and its inherent nature rather than fighting against it, allowing you to flow with the path of least resistance to your objectives.
Sun Tzu then outlines 6 critical ways a general can court defeat, serving as a powerful warning for any leader.
Yes, these calamities are 1. Insubordination, where strong soldiers are let loose by weak officers. 2. Collapse, due to a weak general with no authority. 3. Rout, when an inferior force engages a larger one or weak detachments face powerful ones without picked soldiers at the front. 4. Disorganization from a general's inherent weakness in authority or clarity of orders. 5. Flight due to a reckless general. And 6. Capitulation when a general is easily provoked by insults or overly sensitive.
These are serious failings.
They are.
Yeah.
And he contrasts these strategic liabilities with the ideal commander who unites culture with a warlike temper. The profession of arms requires a combination of hardness and tenderness.
Balance again. These are critical failure modes for any leader, not just military ones. How can you recognize and actively avoid these pitfalls in your own leadership or within any team you are a part of?
It's about cultivating balance, firmness with fairness, clear communication, strategic foresight, and emotional resilience. Recognizing these potential pitfalls within yourself is the essential first step toward mitigating them and becoming a more effective and enduring leader.
The chapter concludes with a truly powerful and moving description of the ideal leader, the jewel of the kingdom.
Yes. The general who advances without coveting fame and retreats without fearing disgrace, whose only thought is to protect his country and do good service for his sovereign. This general, Sun Tzu, says, regards his soldiers as your children, and they will follow you into the deepest valleys, look on them as your own beloved sons, and they will stand by you even unto death.
That's incredible loyalty. The story of Wu Qi.
Yes, the famous ancient general Wu Qi embodies this. He was known for eating the same coarse food and wearing the same humble clothes as his meanest soldiers. Once, a soldier suffered an abscess, and Wu Qi himself sucked out the virus from the wound.
Seriously.
Yes. While the soldier's mother lamented, knowing her son would now feel compelled to die for him, just as her husband had before, it undeniably demonstrates the fierce, reciprocal loyalty this profound compassion can inspire.
But there's a warning, too, about being too indulgent.
Yes. Sun Tzu contrasts this ideal with a stern, pragmatic warning. If, however, you are indulgent, but unable to make your authority felt, kind-hearted but unable to enforce your commands, and incapable, moreover, of quelling disorder, then your soldiers must be likened to spoilt children. They are useless for any practical purpose.
So kindness without authority is useless.
Exactly. This illustrates the complex, almost paradoxical balance of leadership. Compassionate care and shared hardship must be combined with unwavering authority and clear, consistent discipline. True loyalty and effectiveness are earned through a blend of genuine concern and consistent, firm guidance.
How can you inspire fierce loyalty and commitment in your personal and professional relationships while maintaining necessary boundaries and standards? It sounds like a leadership tightrope, but one that yields profound results.
It really does. Now, in Part 4, Decisive Action, we turn to specific critical situations and the absolute indispensable role of intelligence. Chapter 11, The 9 Situations, presents 9 distinct varieties of ground.
9 different types of battlefield conditioned.
Essentially, yes. Each demanding a precisely tailored approach from the general. These types include 1. Dispersive, where troops tend to scatter. 2. Facile, easily traversed. 3. Contentious, where gaining a small advantage is worth fighting for.
Like key high ground.
Exactly. 4. Open, giving both sides freedom. 5. Ground of intersecting highways, strategically crucial. 6. Serious, deep in enemy territory. 7. Mountain forests, rugged, difficult terrain. 8. Hemmed in, offering limited escape. And 9. Desperate ground where survival is at stake.
And for each, Sun Tzu offers precise tactical instructions, emphasizing that adaptability.
Complete adaptability, for example. On dispersive ground, therefore, fight not, meaning focus on internal cohesion first. On facile ground, halt not, keep moving decisively. On hemmed-in ground, resort to stratagem. Pure cunning is required because brute force won't work.
And on desperate ground,
With stark clarity, on desperate ground, fight because there is simply no other option.
Hannibal's trick with the oxen. That fits here.
Perfectly. When trapped by Fabius in a hemmed-in situation, Hannibal resorted to stratagem. At night, he fastened burning bundles to the horns of 2,000 oxen and drove them toward enemy-held passes. The strange spectacle so alarmed the Romans they withdrew, allowing Hannibal's army to escape. That's adapting through artifice and creativity when cornered.
This concept also connects powerfully to the principle, rapidity is the essence of war.
Yes, as shown by Sima Er's lightning-fast march 1,200 layers in just 8 days, to attack Meng Ta before his planned defection could even materialize. It demonstrates the power of overwhelming speed in specific, time-sensitive situations.
What's profoundly fascinating here is the nuanced understanding of when to act, when to hold back, and when to completely shift strategy, all based on the specific ground you're on.
Exactly. In any situation, whether it's a project, a negotiation, or a personal conflict, understanding the type of ground you occupy can dictate your chances of success. For instance, on dispersive ground, where your troops might be scattered or morale low, Sun Tzu says he would inspire his men with unity of purpose.
Which means,
as the commentators advise, this is best achieved by remaining defensive and avoiding battle, focusing inward to build strength first. So when your resources or team are scattered, or you face a multitude of distractions, the immediate priority is often cohesion and consolidation, not aggressive outward action.
focus inward to build strength, consolidate your position, and unify your purpose before attempting to move outward. That makes sense.
Sun Tzu also delves into the remarkable psychology of soldiers in desperate straits. They lose the sense of fear. If there is no place of refuge, they will stand firm. If they are in the heart of a hostile country, they will show a stubborn front. If there is no help for it, they will fight hard.
So desperation breeds courage.
And loyalty, paradoxically. This state of dire peril forges an incredible sense of determination. Soldiers, when pushed to the brink without waiting to be marshaled, become constantly on the qui-vive, always on alert. Without waiting to be asked, they will do your will. Without restrictions, they will be faithful, and without giving orders, they can be trusted.
That's amazing trust, born from shared desperation.
It is. He also advises explicitly prohibiting omens and doing away with superstitious doubts, as then, until death itself comes, no calamity need be feared. The commentator Huang Shikong clarifies that spells and incantations should be strictly forbidden. For fear, the soldier's mind should be seriously perturbed by irrational fears.
Keep them focused on reality, not superstition.
Right. Sun Tzu even describes the incredibly poignant scene of soldiers weeping on the day they are ordered to battle, those sitting up bedewing their garments and those lying down letting the tears run down their cheeks.
Are they scared?
Not necessarily fear in the paralyzing sense. Xiao Kung's commentary clarifies, this is a sign that all have embraced the firm resolution to do or die. They are processing the gravity, the potential sacrifice, but once brought to bay, they will display the immense courage of ancient heroes.
What's deeply fascinating is the psychological insight here. Extreme pressure, when all other options are removed, can forge incredible unity, determination, and resilience.
It really can. This suggests that sometimes removing all perceived easy outs can unlock immense, unexpected determination within individuals or a team. It also reminds us that emotional displays aren't always what they seem. Sometimes tears are a prelude to fierce resolve.
Chapter 12, The Attack by Fire, shifts to the concept of calculated, devastating disruption. Sounds dramatic.
It is. Sun Tzu lists 5 specific ways to use fire as a strategic weapon. 1. Burning soldiers in their camp. 2. Burning stores. 3. Burning baggage trains. 4. Burning arsenals. And 5. Hurling fire amongst the enemy's lines or supply routes.
Pan Chao used this.
Yes, the daring night attack by fire carried out by Pan Chao in 88 AD on the Sun Tzu envoy's camp is a vivid historical example. Faced with an enemy envoy surrounded by Sun Tzu soldiers, Pan Chao dared to propose a night assault by fire, profiting by their panic.
Risky move.
Very. He executed it during a strong gale, burning their camp, leading to immediate panic and the complete extermination of the Sun Tzu envoys, which completely overawed the countries of the West.
But Sun Tzu stresses strict conditions for such an attack. You can't just light fires anywhere.
No, definitely not. You must have means available, favorable circumstances, like wind direction. You need the material for raising fire always ready. And you pick the proper days when the moon is in certain constellations like the Sieve or Wing, which are deemed days of rising wind and thus opportune.
So it's calculated, not random.
Absolutely. There's also crucial caution and strategic follow-up. If the enemy is in a strong and organized position, do not attack with fire. Only follow up with an attack if that is practicable. If not, stay where you are. And, crucially, one must always be to windward of it. Do not attack from the leeward to avoid being consumed by your own weapon.
Right, don't set yourself on fire. The successful use of fire by Huangfu Sung against the Yellow Turban rebels illustrates this calculated approach.
Yes, he exploited thick grass and a strong breeze perfectly. Now, this isn't about literal arson for you, the listener. It's a powerful metaphor for disruptive, high-impact actions designed to destabilize an opponent, create chaos, and open up opportunities that you can then exploit.
So when you are facing a stubborn obstacle or a difficult market, what is your attack by fire? The bold, well-timed, high-impact move that shifts the dynamics and forces a breakthrough.
Exactly. It's about calculated disruption, not indiscriminate destruction.
Finally, we arrive at Chapter 13, the use of spies, which highlights their absolutely indispensable role in achieving ultimate foreknowledge.
Yes, and Sun Tzu makes a powerful economic and ethical argument right at the outset. He says, hostile armies may face each other for years, striving for the victory which is decided in a single day. This being so, to remain in ignorance of the enemy's conditions simply because one grudges the outlay of 100 ounces of silver in honors and emoluments for spies is the height of inhumanity.
The height of inhumanity, that's strong, because being ignorant costs lives.
Exactly. Think about the profound meaning here. Investing in intelligence, Sun Tzu argues, saves far greater costs in the long run, not just financial resources, but countless lives and wasted effort. He states, quite frankly, that one who acts thus is no leader of men, no present help to his sovereign, no master of victory.
So what enables success, then?
Thus, what truly enables the wise sovereign and the good general to strike and conquer and achieve things beyond the reach of ordinary men is foreknowledge.
And where did this foreknowledge not come from?
Sun Tzu is specific. It cannot be elicited from spirits, cannot be obtained inductively from experience, nor by any deductive calculation.
So not magic, not just looking at the past, not just logic puzzles. Where does it come from?
Sun Tzu is unambiguous. Knowledge of the enemy's dispositions can be obtained only from other men. This leads directly to the essential, invaluable role of spies.
So real insight comes from people.
Yes. The profound meaning here is that for true strategic advantage, relying on gut feelings, past successes, or pure logical deduction is insufficient. Real, actionable insight, especially about human adversaries, comes from targeted, often subtle information gathering, which often means human sources.
For you, this raises an important question. How do you gain genuine foreknowledge in your personal or professional life, beyond guesswork or abstract analysis? What critical sources of information, perhaps human ones, are you neglecting?
That's the challenge. Sun Tzu then meticulously details 5 distinct classes of spies, emphasizing the complexity and nuance of intelligence operations.
Okay, what are they?
1. Local spies, employing the services of the inhabitants of a district. 2. Inward spies, making use of officials or disaffected individuals within the enemy's own ranks.
Turning people on the inside.
Right. 3. Converted spies, those who are original enemy spies whom you capture and turn to your own side. 4. Doomed spies. This one's chilling. Yes. Your own spies, whom you intentionally feed false information to, knowing they will be caught and pass it to the enemy, leading to their inevitable demise once their mission is complete. A truly chilling concept of strategic sacrifice.
Wow, that's ruthless.
It is. And 5. Surviving spies, those who manage to penetrate enemy lines, gather accurate, vital information, and successfully bring it back.
He stresses how important it is to manage these assets carefully.
Extremely carefully. None in the whole army are more intimate relations to be maintained than with spies. None should be more liberally rewarded. In no other business should greater secrecy be preserved. He states they cannot be properly managed without benevolence and straightforwardness, and require subtle ingenuity of mind and delicate perception to be truly effective.
This isn't about literal espionage for you in your daily life, obviously, but it serves as a powerful metaphor for strategic information gathering and influence in competitive settings.
Exactly. Think of it as competitive intelligence, meticulous market research, or strategic networking within your industry. It emphasizes that the most valuable information often comes from human intelligence and requires trust, careful handling, and a keen, subtle mind to interpret and act upon.
It also highlights the absolute necessity of managing information flow to prevent leaks and to counter any attempts at counterintelligence.
Very much so. Historically, the impact of superior intelligence is undeniable. Sun Tzu himself cites, the rise of the Yin dynasty was due to Ichi, who had served under the preceding Si dynasty and provided crucial intelligence.
The defector, basically.
Well, effectively, yes. And the rise of the Chao dynasty was due to Li Ya, who had done the same against the Yin. These examples illustrate the monumental civilization-altering impact of superior, well-utilized intelligence.
But there's a warning at the end.
Yes, the commentator Tumu concludes with a sobering warning, reminding us that this powerful tool is a double-edged sword. Just as water, which carries a boat from bank to bank, may also be the means of sinking it, so reliance on spies, while productive of great results, is oftentimes the cause of utter destruction.
What's profoundly fascinating here is the inherent, almost existential risk. Information is indeed power, but it must be handled with extreme care, discernment, and ethical consideration within your own boundaries.
Absolutely. Misinformation, betrayal, or mishandling of intelligence can lead to disaster, serving as a powerful reminder of the hidden dangers and moral complexities in seeking and utilizing privileged, covert knowledge. It's not just about getting the information, but about the wisdom to use it correctly.
What an incredible journey we've taken today. We've spanned centuries, dissecting Sun Tzu's profound wisdom in the art of war.
It's been quite a deep dive. From the fundamental principles of knowing yourself, your enemy, and your terrain, to the imperative of speed, the genius of adaptability through direct and indirect methods.
The subtle art of strategic deception and the absolutely indispensable role of intelligence and foreknowledge.
As we've seen, the art of war isn't merely a manual for combat. It is, at its core, a timeless masterclass in navigating conflict, making informed strategic decisions, and achieving sustainable success in virtually any domain of life.
It's about leveraging psychology, keen observation, meticulous preparation, and subtle influence to shape circumstances in your favor.
Sun Tzu teaches us that true strategic mastery lies not in brute strength or direct, costly confrontation, but in a profound, almost invisible understanding of ourselves, our environment, and our adversaries.
This holistic awareness allows us to shape circumstances and achieve victory, often before the visible struggle or conflict even truly begins.
It's about cultivating an inner wisdom that anticipates and prepares.
So for you, the listener, we leave you with this provocative thought to mull over. What does it mean for you to win the battle for it's fought in your own life, in your career, your relationships, or your personal challenges? Think about that and keep diving deep into knowledge.